Hello everybody and welcome back. This is HD and it's time for the semifinal game 2 between Strelok and Sen. So far Sen taking a quick loss to the face from Strelok. Strelok capitalizing on that early Banshee harass and capitalizing on the fact that Sen never really scouted him out. I was just thinking about that game before I loaded up this game, and I remembered that Strelok threw down a command center before he went for the 1-1-1 opening. So essentially it was a delayed 1-1-1 opening with a command center thrown in there, and he allowed the command center to be scouted. So Sen saw that command center inside the main and he thought, okay, probably a fast expo build, and he just didn't expect a Banshee to come out, and Strelok capitalized on that, made a Banshee pop out of the sky, out of blue air essentially, because who goes for a fast starport after that command center? It's very unexpected, and Strelok was able to take the game away thanks to that Banshee. Now, we do have the players spawning here on Terminus, and of course, Sen being the loser of the last game, deciding to play on this map. I like that decision. This is a pretty big map, pretty nice for Zerg. The downside, though, is that they have spawned right next to each other in terms of air. So, if Strelok decides to go for the skies again, if he decides to go for that early Banshee, it's really just a hop and a scotch, or a hip and a hop, over to the third of the Zerg, and then right behind in outer space to the natural. So if Strelok decides to go for those early Banshees once again, that could be pretty disastrous for Sen. Sen here will be going for the hatchery once again, 14 hatch. Looks like he is just gonna basically go for what he does well, and you know, this is a good map to do it on. If any map you can 14 hatch on, this is the map to do it. And Sen finally moving out with his scouting drone. Note, his overlord actually moving in the wrong direction to start things off. So Sen a little bit blind, but this drone about to remedy that. And it's going to cross over with the Xel'Naga tower first, tagging it just momentarily. All good players will always, with their scouting worker, just touch the watchtower for a moment. And the reason to do that is if you can sight the opponent scout as it's moving across the map, you can actually get a quick some quick information as to where the opponent actually spawned at. Now, we do have the wall being completed by Strelok by another supply depot, which once again is going to deny the scouting for Sen. And Sen, this is the reason why he lost game 1. He just never got good scouting information. And out of the barracks, what is being built? Ho, 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 we have a Reaper coming out. Strelok is really mixing things up here, guys. You know, Reaper, it's a great scouting mechanic in Terran versus Protoss, but it hasn't seen that much action in TVZ ever since the Reaper got that horrible nerf, which almost put the Reaper on the history books, on the extinct pages of the history books. But Strelok is looking to revive the Reaper here, is actually making a couple out of this barracks, and right away throwing down a command center as well. That is so interesting. Well, we'll see what happens. The Reaper making quick use of this terrain. Essentially, it is a flying unit, so it's going to hop right into the main of the Zerg, but essentially running into a wall of Zerglings, and that is going to be it for that Reaper. But we'll see if Strelok is going to wait for a second Reaper and then try more aggression. He actually has an SCV here, so he may be thinking about building a bunker just outside the Zerg natural. That could be pretty rough. Meanwhile, back in the main on the production tab, we do have Factory and Reactor coming out, so we may see a switch into Hellions. Here comes the Reapers once again. Reapers can outrange a Queen, and they are especially good against Queens when they are off creep, but they do take a long time to damage Queens, seeing as how Reapers do extra damage to Light, and the Queen is actually not a Light unit. Reapers will run by the Queens once again into the main. Gonna damage a couple of drones here, but just a little bit of a scratch to the Zerg economy. Not much. That will be easily repaired, and this Reaper will be picked off. As it was using its jetpack to hop off that ledge, it got picked off by one Zergling, or by a group of Zerglings, and that will be the end of the Reaper harass. Immediately, Sen also throwing up a Roach Warren too. So you guys can see that Sen is very concerned about these early Reapers, and I can tell you as a Zerg, when you see one or more Reapers, when you see 2 Reapers especially, you start thinking that something fishy is going on, some kind of a cheese build, so you will get a Roach Warren just in case. But Sen wisely also building drones right now. He is not overproducing roaches. In fact, he's not making a single roach at all. He realized those Reapers were just for early harass, and they're not going to be any kind of a committed unit. Meanwhile, back at the main, Strelok getting a starport, so he may once again take to the skies. Zergling also scouting for the command center, but no command center to be seen as it's still inside the main here. And Strelok opting not to lift it off yet. We do have Zerglings running across the map. These Zerglings do not have speed yet, and that could be troublesome. It does look like speed is on the way though, so those Zerglings are soon going to get the upgrade they need to deal with the Terran Marines. And now that the command center has come down after the Zergling has been taken out, I think Strelok is going to be pretty comfortable with his natural expansion here, and he's even bringing all those main-arted SCVs over. He's just looking to gear up and bulk up his economy right now, guys. And with 2 bunkers and all this and the siege tanks up here, I think he's going to be quite safe against Sen, and I don't think Sen is going to try to bust that down. In fact, if we look over here, it does look like Sen is going to be getting a 3rd as well. So both these players content to go into the macro game with their builds. Aside from that early Reaper harass, nothing crazy happening, and Sen is actually being very cautious here, getting a Spore Crawler at each one of his bases, and I think he did scout the starport. Yes, indeed. He saw the starport with a Scouting Overlord, and by seeing that starport, he realized, okay, there is going to be most likely Banshees once again, and even if it isn't Banshees, Spore Crawlers are going to be great to deal with, maybe even dropships. But as it stands, Strelok is getting a Banshee, no cloak though. And with the Spore Crawlers there, I think Sen is going to be just fine. These players are really playing defensively right now, which surprises me. I thought Sen might try to play an aggressive game once again. Sen does have a pretty large economic lead right now, 51 over 37. Banshee coming in here though, immediately encounters the Queen and runs away. And it's going to come towards the backside, and it sees, aha, there's a hatchery here. I could go for it, but I think that Strelok is going to go ahead and hop towards the backside using the terrain very nicely. Going to come towards the back, and there is an area that is exposed to the Banshee, but with the Queen there, I think this Banshee harass is going to be pretty much nullified. And Strelok, I think, back at the main, just throwing up some more buildings, and I think he's going to go into a Marine Mech Bio build here after this Banshee harass. He realizes, okay, I'm not really doing any damage whatsoever with this Banshee. It's just kind of floating around. It hasn't really killed off any drones. But I can drop down my tech into a standard style of play, which is basically Marines and tanks. Sen gonna go for Mutalisks, though. And I like that. He actually has enough gas to fund a pretty darn large Muta army. If we look at the gas right now, Sen has 550 gas accumulated. And I think once the Spire finishes, he should have enough gas for about 6 or 7 Mutalisks. The Banshee, meanwhile, did not scout the Spire out because of the great Queen and Spore Crawler placement. The Spine Crawler was not the Spine Crawler, the Spire was not scouted out. So right now, Strelok has no idea that there are Mutalisks coming, but just to be safe, I do believe he has 1 or 2 missile turrets. I did see one being constructed somewhere, but no, looks like he's pretty bare right now. I don't really see that many missile turrets anywhere at all. So he may actually be vulnerable to these early Mutalisks. And right now we do have 7 coming out for Sen. Sen also throwing down his auxiliary hatchery inside the natural, grabbing the 5th at the same time as well. And as both these players build up that economy and rack up the money they need to fund the war in the mid to late game, we're about to see a clash of pretty epic proportions, I think. Both these players about dead even in army supply, but the Mutalisks have come out, and finally it's time for Sen. It's turn for the Zerg now to strike at the Terran player, to do some damage. He has 7 Mutalisks here, and really not that many missile turrets. There's a missile turret inside the main, and there was, I guess, another missile turret covering the barracks as well. So wisely, Strelok throwing up a couple missile turrets, never really scanned the Spire, but realized that, okay, the Zerg is going for the 3rd hatch. The standard timing for Mutalisks to come out around for 3 hatcheries is around 12 minutes. So he got those missile turrets up at the right time, and once again, Mutalisks, once again, an attack window has been denied, and Sen now been regulated down to basically just flying around the map and picking off whatever units he can, but he will not be able to come after the meaty SCV line because there's already double missile turrets up at every single location. Marines also coming in as well, and I think these Mutalisks will just have to turn tail and find a better spot to attack, or find another day to live and fight, because there are just so many Marines on the ground there. Surprisingly, no shield upgrades though. Wow, these Marines, guys, have just +1 weapons, and they do have stim, but they have absolutely no shield upgrades. I think it's about to come up though. There we go. All the Marines have been retrofitted with shields, and they are now 10 hit points heavier. and stronger. And I think Strelok, waiting for that shield upgrade to finish, has decided it is now time to push out. He's got the biomech army that he needs to do some damage, and he's going to push off across the center of the map, using this location as kind of a launch platform. I think he may even siege up here and pick off some of the creep tumors, because it would be really, really bad to just walk up here onto the creep with those siege tanks. And wisely, yeah, sieging up, dropping the scans down, picking off the creep tumors, Marines in the front, warding away the mutas. Do we have banelings being made? Yes, we have 9 banelings in production at the back. Sen quickly making those banelings. Hopefully they have speed, because if they don't, that is going to be really tough to break this Marine army, especially with no fungal growth and no infestor support. In fact, if I can find a baneling's nest, I could tell you guys right now if he has the upgrade or not. Yes, he does. So Sen wisely has the upgrades he needs. Meanwhile, on the production tab, Strelok making a couple Thors as well. But he's going to push out, being very cavalier here with his forces before his Thors come out. And this is going to be a pretty scary situation. He's splitting his Terran army up here, his Bioball, to pick off some creep tumors, leaving his tanks vulnerable, but then quickly running them back. Now the Mutalisk coming from behind, taking off a couple tanks in the weak spot when those Marines were picking off creep tumors, and Sen wisely there, making use of the Terran's positioning to pick off a couple of tanks, and does some pretty good damage as a result, whittling down that tank number to around 4 total now. And Strelok, realizing that he's lost some of his tanks, needs to fall back. Army tab showing both players relatively even. The Terran player just down by about 20 supply. So Sen, though, he's got a big army of Lings and Banelings here, though, and he may be thinking about making a flank maneuver. His Mutalisks are also overhead to provide this air support that they need. And it looks like Sen has decided it's time to push in. The tanks are not sieged, ladies and gentlemen. That could be bad, and the tanks sieging up just at the right time. Wow. All thanks to a Marine. That gung-ho scout ran forward and saw that Zerg army and said, he radioed back home and he said, "Tanks, siege up, siege up." And wisely does so as a result. Sen flying across the map, ever menacing with his Mutalisk army. Meanwhile, Strelok once again pushing forward, invading onto the Zerg territory once again, and it looks like Sen is gonna gear up for an attack here, spreading out his Zerg army, running the Banelings right into the Marines. Really nice micro, wiping out all the Marines, covering the tanks and the Thors, but there are still Marines back here, and is there enough Banelings? Yes, it looks like there are enough to kill off a handful of those Marines, but with about 8 Marines left and a dropship and a Thor, these Mutalisks will have to run away and find a better situation to engage. They cannot defend right now, not against this much anti-air. Thankfully, Sen building up a ton of Zerglings here, and these Zerglings will be able to ward off the Terran army. Strelok losing a large majority of his army in that attack means he has to fall back, and he's gonna have to find he's basically gonna have to rebuild his army before he can push out once again. So I believe that our Zerg player may have come out ahead in that exchange, whittling down the Terran army majorly. We can see now Sen has a 30 supply lead, about a 35 supply lead. So Sen is looking quite good. Strelok realizing, okay, I need to grab a 4th expansion, dropping down a ton of mules. It's a mule haven here. And the command center comes down to land and receive some mining here. But the Mutalisk coming in from the north, picks off a couple of tanks. Nice job by Sen. He's also getting a little antsy with those Zerglings back there. But the tank shot will ward them away for now. Now, I gotta say, I think Sen's economy is still just light years ahead of his opponent Strelok. Look at this. He's got 2 bases up here. He's getting his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th right now. So essentially it's going to be 6 base versus 4 base. So Strelok is basically down by 1 expansion, if you ask me. But I still think it's a situation where the Terran player can win. You have to remember that Terran players can fund a very big army off of 2 bases. And of course Strelok has this new freshly mining base here with a ton of mules. Basically the Mule Haven, and back here he's still got the 3rd mining very strongly. The natural still has saturation as well, so Terran player really looking good. And in fact, Strelok has remacroed an entire army here. He's at max 194, just about 6 supplies under max, and he is pushing out with a pretty large army at the same time, making a double drop attack to the north here. He knows that there's expansions up here, but there's already spine crawlers, and I think that those dropships will probably be warded away. Meanwhile, the Banelings being funneled back into the natural. Not a good spot for Sen, as he's not going to have a good concave anymore. The dropship harass has been thwarted and pushed away though. So Sen really dealing with two different fronts here. He needs to be careful of these banelings. If they run forward, they'll be obliterated by the siege tanks. And the tanks here are going to absolutely annihilate all the banelings. Meanwhile, though, more lings coming in from the north. And I think those were lings that were early at the middle of the map. And it may be enough Zerglings to pick off the rest of the tanks. Yes, indeed it is. Sen making a brilliant defense. And Strelok not expecting units to come in from this northern location, resulting in the demise of his entire army. But meanwhile, the Marines have dropped off at least north 1 o'clock expansion, picking off Zerglings, could possibly pick off that hatchery as well. Meanwhile, it looks like the banelings are morphing once again. There are no Marines really. There's a couple Marines back here though. These lings are destroying the Terran mech, and they're still alive, picking apart the Marines. And now that the banelings are out, I think these Marines are going to be warded away. Really nice play by Sen, but who is going to come out ahead in this exchange? I think that Strelok will, because he comes off by picking off a hatchery, and Sen does not get any bases whatsoever. He did not deny the mining here. He never did any damage to the economy of the Terran. If we pull up that income tab though, Sen actually does have more economy, 25 more drones, but in terms of bases mining, the Terran player is right on par with the Zerg right now, and I think Strelok did exactly what he needed to do to even out this game a little bit, because the Zerg player was running wild with that economy, and in fact Strelok is still making these drops happen, guys. He's dropped more Marines off, picking off Zerglings left and right, and if he can pick off this hatchery here, that would be a golden blow, a golden opportunity to deal a crushing blow to the Zerg player. You know, take 2 bases out for the price of nothing, essentially your army, but you know, you're killing off army units at the same time as well. That would be brilliant. But I think that Strelok has decided to fall back all throughout that engagement, grabbing yet another planetary fortress here. So he's getting his mining going up once again. Production tab showing Sen not opting to go for, not opting to go for Hive, even though he does have Hive out. He does not have any Hive tech out. No Ultras, no Broodlords, still on Lair tech, and he's actually switching down to Mutalisks now. In fact, still sticking with the Mutalisk clump that he's had before. So he's sticking with Mutas and Banelings and Lings, which is good, but I think eventually he will need to go to those Hive units if he wants to win this game. Hitting the backside of this expansion once again, destroying the grid of triple missile turrets here almost immediately. Sen actually has an almost unmanageable number of Mutalisks at this point. That's almost 2 control groups. 1 full nearly, and picking off more Marines, gonna pick off the rest of these tanks as well. And Strelok is gonna have to quickly erect some more missile turrets up and, you know, get a Thor at each one of these bases for defensive purposes, because these Mutalisks are just so many, so much in number, that I think Sen may be able to do some serious damage inside the Terran main here. He can pick off all these add-ons. All these buildings are exposed to the Mutalisks, and oh man, I can tell you, as a Zerg player, and having many Terran friends, you know, picking off all these reactors and add-ons and tech labs, hugely damaging the Terran player. Once again, Sen making a 2-pronged attack with Mutas and Banelings after striking the heart of the Terran land, the barracks and the factories, comes out of the main with the Muta clump and strikes the Terran ball here with Banelings combined, doing some serious damage. And Strelok now reeling from the constant attack. I almost feel like Sen maybe coming out ahead in these exchanges with these Mutalisks, constantly keeping that Terran ball down to a minimum and not allowing Strelok to max out. That's absolutely key. And once again, striking these missile turrets again and again. He has so many Mutalisks, why not? But Sen, oh my god, has lost a huge clump of Mutalisks. I was gonna compliment Sen right there on the fact that he's able to keep his Mutalisks constantly active. A lot of times Zerg players will lose track of their Mutalisks. They won't keep them active and flying all the time. Sen was doing a good job right there, but a little bit of mismanagement resulted in the demise of about half of his Mutalisk clump. And now his anti-air, or at least his air-to-ground force, is much, much weaker. And with that, Strelok realizing I can push forward with my tanks. There's not much to stand in the way of a death blow here, except these Marines and Banelings. But nice positioning by Strelok. Tanks on the south and tanks on the north with Marines as well could result in the loss of this hatchery. And I think if Sen loses this hatchery, I do not see him continuing forward in this game. His macro will not be able to keep up. You guys can see his mineral count staying very low. Both players' mineral count staying extremely low. But Sen, realizing that he has to GG out, does not have enough bases to continue funding this war. And Strelok taking a quick 2-0 lead. And brilliantly played by both these players. What an amazing game of StarCraft that was. Strelok saying that, showing that momentum is key, especially now he's got huge momentum in this game, 2-0, meaning he only needs to win one more game in this best of 5 to advance to the grand finals of the HD World Tournament. Strelok also has, it looks like he was going for some Thor drop action as well back here too. Nice game right there, guys. I applaud the players, but it is not over yet. We are going to move on to the third game here in this series. Once again, Sen, the loser, will pick the next map, and I wonder what map he is going to pick next. All right, guys, HD signing up.